Welcome back to another episode with Streamline. Today I have a question for you. Are you a business owner that has considered putting your product on a larger online marketplace? Have you wondered how, where, who do you contact? Today I've got the ultimate guy and person that is going to help explain it all for us. We have Andrew Rowson from Emotive Online. Welcome.
Hi, Holly. How you doing? What an introduction.
Thank you. Did I know
Fantastic.
that?
Yeah, I know. Can I take you everywhere with me and introduce me?
Well, I know you've just come back from Bulgaria.
I
Thank you
have.
for flying
Yeah,
straight
I know.
in.
Absolutely. So, thank you for inviting me. And it's an awesome place, this is.
So tell us a little bit about Emotive.
Well, so we specialize in helping businesses, brands promote themselves using marketplaces. So marketplaces predominantly in the UK, looking Amazon, eBay, other Chinese ones there as well. And we educate, we can do it for you, or we could do everything in respects of that. So that's advertising brand, selling product, and all the bits in between as well.
Amazing. So Andrew, how did you get into that? Because I know you've had quite a history in the online marketplace before.
Yeah.
So how did you kind of get into
It's like we taught before, isn't it?
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know, maybe. Yeah, you've done your homework there. It's just the first thing. Yeah, it's good. My history is I was one of the first sellers on eBay back in 2000. Okay, so that was a long time ago. 25 years, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember back in the days where it was the internet was dial-up.
Yeah.
And when you used, yeah, absolutely. So AOL, yeah. So you sit there for about 10 minutes for this picture to appear, and then you'll go that. Now we get frustrated if it buffers on Netflix,
It's
don't we?
wild, isn't it?
Yeah. So I was one of the first sellers on eBay, and it was great because there wasn't so many people buying there, but it was great because there wasn't so many people selling. So we built a business selling car parts on eBay, and we did that from our garage. So I kind of been one of your bedroom sellers, if that makes sense, yeah? And then we started getting more and more orders, and then we had lorries turning up to pick up the parcels, and then my neighbour, who I thought liked me, knocked on the door and said, right, you need to stop this, otherwise you're going to get the council coming around. So after I got over the emotional feeling after that, it actually gave us the push we need. And then we got a unit, and then we progressed on with that as well.
How long did it take before it really blew up and lifted off with that?
Do you know what? The first few months, it trickled through. And then all of a sudden, bam, you saw it go up. And I think if you look at the journey of the internet, because before that I used to work for Sainsbury's. I was in store management at Sainsbury's, and that was back in the day when internet shopping started.
Wow.
Yeah, and the way it all increased is when people started getting internet, and then the internet got faster, and then once we got broadband, that's when it really took off. From that side, but this is back before smartphones.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember, phones that were actually attached to the wall.
Yeah.
A long time ago. Yeah, on that side. But yeah, about 3 months it started kicking off in that respect. And then once you build that reputation, people, it's like a snowball that's going down a hill. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And then you've got the typical growing pains. How do you manage the customer experience? How do you manage, and we were working till like 2 a.m. This is before, all the compliance with PCI, with credit cards. I remember there was me, my mum, my dad. We were up till 2 a.m. keying credit card numbers into a terminal.
No way.
Yeah.
The trust.
Honestly, people would
trust.
just email us their credit card numbers because there was virtually no fraud back then.
Wow.
Yeah, you would never do that now, would you?
So, like, going back to your initial journey,
Yeah. Going
from a store manager at Sainsbury's to setting up Emotive, or your first company.
Yeah.
What kind of sparked that, and what was the entrepreneurial journey like for that?
So, really good question. And if you ask my parents that question about my growth, probably be a little bit different than my answer here. Okay. But I actually left school. I didn't go to university. Okay. So I did A levels, didn't do particularly well at A levels. I was more into working. Okay. I'm not sure you could do that now. So if I talk to my children, you know, for the jobs they're looking at doing, you need to go to university. Yeah. And that's the requirement. So from that side, I then went to work for Sainsbury's. And if you ask my father, that actually gave me structure, because you're working for a big corporation. Yeah. And they've got a policy for everything, you know, and they know exactly what sells, and they know exactly where to put it on the shelf. And, you know, as a manager there, you wouldn't use your imagination as much, because you just got a plan and you just did what you were told. You were an implementer there to some extent. And that's what killed me off, to be honest, because I had some great ideas. Yeah. I remember once when I was there, instead of ordering 13 crates of broccoli, I ordered 13 pallets of broccoli.
Oh.
Yeah. So first of all, yeah. And the first of all thing, I was thinking, oh no, I'm going to get sacked.
Yeah.
So in this lorry, I said, can you take them back? And he said, no, they're yours. And they've got a shelf life for 2 days, yeah?
Did there happen to be an offer on that week?
A little bit of offer. We had it in the canteen. You know, you could do so many things with broccoli. I don't know. I could probably tell you afterwards. I've got so many recipes. But we got rid of it all. You know, we put pallets. We did reduce it. We didn't lose money, but we could use our entrepreneurial spirit in order to actually move that. If you walk into a Sainsbury's, let's say in Northampton or Sandy or wherever it is, it's virtually the same. You know, you always have the produce at the front, because that attracts people in and makes the colours. And then you go through the journey, and that's all done on people's psychological way of how they buy more and things like that. The offers are at the back because they want to bring you through that. You can't use your own imagination as a store manager to do that. And I think that's what stifled me.
Yeah.
Plus, I got a good payout for redundancy as well. So,
how important would you say creativity is when you're actually starting up on your first entrepreneurial journey? Because off air, you mentioned that you weren't very creative, but evidently you're creative in dealing with that situation there. So applying that into your first business, were there ever issues when you're starting up that you kind of thought, right, this is how I need to deal with the situation? And how important is being creative with particular issues that pop up within your first company? How important is that?
yeah, really important. And I think there's two elements of that. You've got to be really positive about absolutely everything, especially if you're working your startup, you're working by yourself. You are going to have challenges, and you'll have challenges. I have challenges now. We've got a 14-year-old business, and our challenges we have today are totally different than when we were a startup. Yeah. So you've got to remain positive. And 80% of them you will solve. You will find a solution, because you've got to keep in that positive mental attitude. Because if you don't, it's a downward spiral. 100% downward spiral, yeah? But you haven't got to be in the cloud, and you haven't got to ignore the things, you know. You've got to deal with them, but in a constructive way. And that's maturity, and time and experience has given me that education on that side. But from a creativity point of view, absolutely. I think it's harder than it was when I started, because we were feeling our feet. There wasn't so much regulation. There wasn't, you know, I remember one time I made £40,000 on selling insurance with each parcel that I dispatched out. I got it free from the carriers.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was an opt-out when you checked out. Now they changed the laws, you know? Yeah, you're not allowed to offer it. Yeah, I know. But that's creativity on that side, you know? And you still see that, you know? For example, Ryanair, you check out, you get offered absolutely everything on there, and that's how they make their money. You've got to look at what you're doing and how much you can do in order to add value back to your customer in order to bring more money in.
So, like, just to wrap up kind of your previous experience and all of that, I know we've actually spent quite a lot of time on this, but what one piece of advice would you give an upcoming entrepreneur that wants to get into selling on online marketplaces?
Yeah, could really dig down into that. If we're taking one single thing, do something you feel really passionate about. As I said, you will be in a lonely place when you start up, okay? And if you look at the statistics about how long businesses last from first year to 10 years, they're not really in the favour. I'll be honest, But the ones that do, they're really passionate. They really love what they do. Yeah, because that drives you forward. And you know, I did. You know, I left Sainsbury's because I felt that I'd got what I needed out of that experience, and I wanted to become more entrepreneurial. And every single minute I worked, I would see the benefit of that. Yeah.
I think that's the most important thing, actually. Loving what you do makes such a big difference.
Yeah, and I think, you know, we've had many conversations. You love what you do.
Yeah.
100%. You can see that, yeah? You can see that. And it doesn't become a job then, does it? It becomes something really fun, you know, something you want to actually do. But you've got to balance it as well. And I'm talking in a way that I know I don't follow this, but you know, you've got to balance family life and work as well.
Which is exceptionally hard.
Oh yeah, I think everyone here could say that, couldn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, on that side. But then you've got to have that person with you that supports you and understands it and follows that dream with you as well. I think that support really is fundamental.
Shout out to all the partners.
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, they've got to deal with a lot. They've got to deal with obviously home life, all of that. Our being an entrepreneur, our diaries aren't rigid.
No.
So there's times where we're working up until 2-3 o'clock in the morning. We're doing things like we're in the warehouse, for example. We're packing products, we're sending them out, all of that sort of stuff. So they've got to be quite understanding in what we do.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think one good thing about running your own business is there is that element of flexibility. So if you've got a young family, you want to drop the kids off in the morning to school and pick them up, you can work around that. But then you're also working a lot more hours into the night time, aren't you? You know, you're answering emails at 2-3 o'clock in the morning if you can't sleep, you know, that sort of thing, aren't you? Yeah, so yes, sometimes still there. Depends on where we are.
But then it's about knowing when is the right time to scale your business, right? And this is moving into those online marketplaces.
Yes.
Let's use eBay as an
Okay.
example.
Okay.
When is the right time for a business to scale, would you say?
So it depends on your business, the category, the sort of things you're selling, I have to say. So if you look at marketplaces and eBay specifically, okay, that gives two things. One, it puts you in touch with sellers that you wouldn't normally have either for your website, another marketplace, international sellers. You know, most of, you know, eBay is one of the biggest exporters, you know, sites around the world. You know, I've just come from Lithuania at an eBay event, and all those people are selling not in Lithuania, they're selling in the US, the UK, Germany, and Australia. Now, if they hadn't got a marketplace like eBay, they'd just be selling in Lithuania. So that's what it gives you. I'll give you one other example, really good example. So we did some work with BMW a long time ago, and they started listing on eBay, okay? One of the biggest sellers was a £19 extendable ice brush, which they got loads of these in the warehouse, yeah? And they never sold them through the dealers. And the reason for that is because people who are passionate about the BMW brand, you know, you'll see these BMW clubs and things like that, yeah. But they're afraid to go into a dealer because they can't afford the X6 or the X5. So they're embarrassed to go in there to just buy the merchandise. But online, they can do that, you know, and they're not asked questions. They can pick and choose. And it depends on how good that marketplace is, depending on how they embrace that customer journey. But the other thing is, you know, in car parts, for example, eBay has 14 million unique buyers each month.
Wow, just on car parts?
Yeah. Now, you look at your face.
Yeah, I'm stunned. I just wouldn't even... Where's that all come from? Individuals, yeah. We're in the wrong business.
So with marketplaces, when someone's first starting out their journey, like there's so many different types of marketplaces. You've got marketplaces from Far East that are making huge efforts to get into the UK market. You've got places like eBay that... And then obviously we've got Jeff Bezos is in his huge conglomerate. When you're starting up a business, how do you kind of choose which marketplace to start off in? And which ones work the best with entrepreneurs?
Yeah. So depends on the category. It also depends, like, for example, if we're looking at fashion, eBay's good at sustainable fashion, secondhand. They did that partnership with Love Island. I don't know if you remember that. Yeah. But then, you look at branded stuff, branded fashion. Then you looking around the world, different marketplaces are good on that sort of thing. eBay's good at car parts. If you're looking at things that are coming from China, then there's other marketplaces from that side. So if I'm an entrepreneur and I'm looking to sell my items, the good thing about marketplaces is my investment is low. It's only my time that has to be put in there. Because if you've got your website, let's say you've got a Shopify website, okay? You've got the best website in the world, but you could be the best kept secret unless you promote it through social media, through Google AdWords, and that costs money. On eBay, Amazon, other marketplaces, you often pay once you acquire the sale. So your investment is lower. Now, that percentage can be anything between 7% to 15%, but then actually look how much you spend on social media and AdWords. Yeah. Kind of comparison, isn't it, really? And they've got buyers waiting to be sat there, waiting to buy stuff, Yeah.
So you mentioned Shopify there for a second.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of influencers out there, and these kind of people that say, right, that join my platform, my learning resource, and I will tell you everything you need to know about Shopify, and I can guarantee you 100 grand worth of sales in a month.
Yeah.
I can see your face.
What kind of thing are they doing to your industry right now, and what is your advice to anyone even looking at that sort of stuff?
Yeah, we're all looking for the golden bullet, the quick answer, aren't we?
Yeah.
And I think as time goes on, quite a lot of us are wise, and we start disbelieving that anyway. I've got to say, my organisation, I've got a great team of business development people. And I would kill them if they ever went out with those sort of statements, yeah? Because you've got to understand the business, yeah? And it's very consultative how we approach it. So we understand the people's business. We understand there's people in the business, yeah? And we understand where their needs are, yeah? And then we wrap around a solution to those needs. So those quick wins, I'm going to be top on Google, we'll get you so many sales in that. So, the very American type statements, I would say, yeah, because that's how selling is done a lot over there. But I also know, dealing with a lot of American businesses, they go in with an expectation of 50% of that delivering. And if they get there, then that's fine, not that 100% of £100,000 on that side. So the challenge you've got as a startup, your cash flow's tight. So you've got to make some real good decisions so you don't kill that cash flow on that. And the biggest problem is you invest in those sort of get-rich-quick type schemes. What are you doing? You're wasting time.
And I think people's cotton on to the fact that these people are making money through you buying their courses now.
Yeah.
So it is very risky business.
But this isn't rocket science.
Yeah.
Okay. So you guys buy on marketplaces, don't you? Or maybe Amazon, eBay.
A little bit too much.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you make a decision on those things?
I'm dangerous. I don't think I just buy. If an advert pops up,
customer.
I'm the dream customer, right? So if I'm on Instagram, sometimes I go through these phases like in a month where I've bought 10 things from an Instagram ad.
Okay. So, and that's impulsive.
Impulsive, need it now, don't think about the cost, dream customer.
Okay, so they're tapping into the desirability. You're seeing that you've got that 30-second quick window where they're getting your attention and making it easy for you to press that button to buy it. Yeah. What about yourself?
I'm a little bit different in that I'll go through the reviews. I'll look for the best price, all of that sort of stuff. But if it is something that I need urgent, it's just buy it now.
Yeah.
Buy it now, and it'll be delivered tomorrow. Although, having said that, I've been looking for... don't judge me.
No, come on. No, I'm interested.
I've been looking for a robot vacuum cleaner. right?
Oh.
See, now I want one.
See, there you go. Right, and now I need to create a quick 30-second ad for Holly to buy one.
Exactly. But
It's going to pop up.
in that process, it's actually taken me a lot to commit to it because I want to see all the reviews. I want to make sure that I'm getting the best product. It's a large expense. I want to make sure that I'm going to get the best value for money, and that's actually been delaying my purchasing pattern on that. So for smaller, quick purchases, I would say probably under £100. I'm like, I'll just buy it now. Anything larger than £100, I will really try and think about that. I'll look through all of the reviews. I'll look on YouTube. I'll do a lot of research into it.
So it's quite. So I'm now up to my third robot lawnmower.
Okay.
Because the first two need these cables around the grass.
Yeah.
And I have a dog.
Oh.
I have, my family want to help with the lawnmower sometimes because it's under the edges, so they go through the cable, and I've just had enough because then these lawnmowers are so emotional. It's like having another member of the family. They look at you, go, don't feel like it today. Yeah.
Grass too wet.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, fine. So I got one with a camera, which didn't need to do that. Awesome, it's great because I'm away from home a lot. The grass gets cut. It's probably the job I do in the house, so that's one of the jobs I tick off. It's like when I'm cooking, it's takeaway all the time. But anyway, it's from that side. Now, there's people buy for a couple of reasons, and put yourself in the buyer's shoes. You mentioned the reviews, yeah. So when you're getting your products ready for sale, reviews are really important, because you've got an independent third party giving you that information, haven't you? All starts by your data, So, marketplaces are really good now where they will guide you in what technical information you want. The social media ones are a little bit more loose in that mistakes. It's all about the imagery. It's all about the interaction on that side. And they're ticking that box of emotional for you to just click that button and buy. But if you're buying something more technical like a vacuum cleaner, then you kind of know what you want. You're looking at reputation of the seller. You're looking if it does what you want it to do, what sort of area it does. So you're looking at the technical information. You're looking at the pictures and the imagery, and then you're looking at the reviews. So this is what I'm saying. It's not rocket science. As a seller, you need to make sure you tick all those boxes. And then the price. The price is really important. But one thing I would say, especially as a startup, do not chase the lowest price because it's a downward spiral.
How important is the choice of product that you're actually listing, and what sort of research should be done when you're actually putting a product up on one of these marketplaces? How do you define what sort of margins you need? How do you define if it's an area of high competition? So, for example, if it's in skincare or cosmetics, there's a lot of competition, a lot of products out there. How do you define what product you should be putting out there, and how do you also look at what's actually going to sell well? Because it's all well and good listing up a product, but if there's no traction, if there's no sales, you've invested in inventory, how do you pick that?
Few things there. So when we're talking skincare, cosmetics, brand is really important. So in order to actually, people buy for three reasons: price, availability, and quality. So with skincare, all the big brands that you could buy, not big skincare buyers, you might be able to tell, but L'Oreal, is that one? Clarins? We know a little bit more than us actually there. This is what I normally get. Can you get that from duty free for me? That's what and I normally take a picture and I have to go, do you have this one? From that side. But those brands, I've spent a lot of money building that. Now, marketplaces can do that. On Amazon, for example, you have the brand registry on there. So you can build, as an independent, you bring in a white labeled skincare, you start building all that nice graphics, that video, those kind of testimonials, and you put that on there. And again, people buy things if they feel that it's popular and it's going to do the job they say it's going to do. And marketplaces are great at building brands because it's low cost. That's the good thing from that side. From a cost point of view, you said. So it's important that you try and control as much as you can, because if you bring in something that is easy to be replicated, or a lot of other people can buy it and then sell it, like drop shipping, for example. Yeah, if the drop shipper makes it so easy for you to then sell it, then everyone's going to sell it, if that makes sense. So then what makes you different than the other person selling the same thing? You sell a reputation and then price, and then it gets a downward spiral. So you then need to control your margins and your costs on that side. And there's so many startups that I've worked with, they don't even factor VAT into their calculation. You've got to go in and you've got to look at your logistic costs, the marketplace costs, the taxation costs, your operating costs. Yeah. You know, if you've got someone in the warehouse, pick, packing, dispatching, you can't say, you know, you're going to put that on each item, but you've then got to have an overall operational cost. So you know how much money you're going to have at the end of the day. And then also don't use your bank balance as a indicator of success, because I think you've been there as well, haven't you? You know, you've got bills that you may not know about or you haven't factored in. And then as soon as that comes in, your bank balance could be positive and then goes into negative.
I think ultimately, at the end of the day, turnover is vanity, profit is sanity.
100%. 100%.
That's
Yeah.
what it all really boils down to.
Yeah.
Andrew, you mentioned feedback reviews. And I think as a consumer, we rely on them heavily.
Yes.
Can we trust these online marketplaces though?
I would say you can trust them more than ones that aren't so much policed. Okay, so if we take eBay and Amazon, which they've had feedback reviews from the inception. I've got to say, Amazon has two types: product and seller. Okay, eBay has both now, but the product has only been about 5 or 6 years in coming on that side. Now let's take Amazon. So Amazon has done a lot of work in making sure that those reviews are genuine, okay? Because and as a buyer, I always look at the review, and if there's less than 10, I probably wouldn't buy it. Yeah. Because it makes it very difficult, you know, as working as a partner with these marketplaces. There's so many checks and balances to see who's buying it, the IP address, you know, whether they're all in one area like India and people are then just putting reviews en masse. And I think that did happen in the early days. Whether that happens now, it's much more harder to do that. So I would always look at anything that's 10 or more on that. There's nothing wrong in encouraging people to buy the item and then leave a genuine review. But you can't shortcut the system. You can't get 10 friends to buy it and then just get them to leave a positive review.
For me personally, if I was to go to, say, like a Chinese wholesaler, I have to check through image. That's the only way I trust it, to see it on an actual person, the item.
Yeah, well, but that's a good thing. So we moved house, or we built a house actually 4 years ago, which we were great at doing. And we bought quite a lot of stuff from some of those Chinese there, and some chairs. You know, when they came, I've got to say, they were like dolls' chairs, if that makes sense.
No,
you
yes,
said,
that's
you know, you
happened
look
to me
there and
before.
you're like a little pygmy, aren't you?
Yeah.
Look like that,
Yeah.
So yeah, you have to look at the sizes, because I've got to say, with the imagery, you can look at that and then instead, particularly if I've seen some Chinese things with some very small children stood next to it, and then you go, wow, that's great.
Yeah.
So yeah, always look at the dimensions. The other thing is look at the package of the size of the package it's going to come to you, because if it's going to go by like Royal Mail, you know, that chair's not going to be that big, is it? Really? You know, so you do have to dig it a little bit down. But you know, imagery is really important. There's so many manufacturers that don't invest in imagery, I have to say, and they rely on to the retailer to do that. And then videos, I have to say, videos are so important now, you know. And then Google has moved, you know, in respects of search by image as well. So you've got to have quality images, white background. Amazon insists on that. eBay does, to some extent, on certain categories as well. That's so you can take a picture and it can be found in search as well. From that side.
No, that's all great stuff, but obviously I think we need to address something right now. Right now you're wearing an eBay t-shirt.
I am.
Right? So...
It's washing day, that's right.
So obviously eBay right now, they're kind of seen as a declining marketplace by some people.
Okay.
And how does that really compare with what's actually going on in the industry right now? And I mean, obviously you've got Chinese marketplaces that are coming in, investing 3 billion into the UK, trying to break into the UK market. You've got obviously Amazon, who are just something else. They're out of this world. Where is eBay standing right now, and why should people be still looking at selling online?
Yeah, so one thing I would always say, and that's without an eBay hat on, as a business, I would list my product in as many places as possible. That's the first thing, especially if there's a low investment in doing that. And if you're utilizing software in order to manage that, there's some great software out like that, Limworks and software like that you could put it in one place and it'll populate everywhere. Okay?
That's good.
So that's one thing. Okay. The second thing, looking at the demographic of who you're actually pandering towards as well. So I mentioned car parts. eBay is number one for car parts worldwide. Okay, there's nobody touches them on that. And the reason for that is that they embrace the buying journey. So, Holly, what car do you drive?
Mercedes.
Oh, lovely. Which one?
CLA.
Oh, okay. Very nice. Very nice.
Okay.
You're not so... What would you like to drive?
I had a nice GLE before, but the running cost was extortionate. So
every time I see Faze, he's in a different car.
Oh,
so
yeah, he's got about 5 different cars.
Yeah, a Land Rover today, it was a Jaguar.
Yeah,
from that side. So you know what car you drive, and eBay's embraced that journey. So, if you were a B2B customer, I'd order up and say, I'll want part number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah? But a buyer knows what car they drive, so they start make, model, year, shape. Okay, and that's how eBay's become number one, because they've embraced that journey early on that, and they're maintaining that. And I've just been at a couple of events with eBay, 3 events actually over the last 3 weeks in the car park field, and they're known for that. But then you look at other marketplaces, TikTok shop, for example.
It's massive,
huge. But there's only so much I could do a content video about a alternator, No, so maybe not leaning towards that sort of thing, But if it's fashion, absolutely. If it's more FMCG stuff, skincare, absolutely, It's all very emotional type purchases on that as well. So I think you've got to pick and choose on what you've got to do. Now, answering your question from an eBay perspective, it is number 2 website for e-commerce in the UK, and it is number 2 from a far wide, a country mile, and it's important that you look at those demographic of the buyers that you're after. So eBay has a more kind of older buying public, and then you've got, for example, Shein, which my kids buy from that, because it's more interactive. Then you've got other ones that are more gamification, and they get vouchers, and they get and people get motivated by that side of thing. So there is a place for every one of these. But if you put it up, there's circles of customers, and they're all coming slowly together. But if you say I sell on the internet, I've got my website, you're not selling on the internet. You're missing loads of customers.
I used to shop on eBay all the time when I was younger, and I don't know whether that's just because it was the only real online marketplace in my early years. I would probably say that would be like the last place for me to look now. It'd probably be other online marketplaces. Would you say it's more of a mature audience, eBay?
I say, so with, for example, we talked about the fashion with Love Island. So that's a more younger audience, and you can pick up some real branded stuff, good branded stuff, at a good price on eBay. There's no other marketplace that you can do that's, for example, sustainable, secondhand from that side. Vinted is a little bit like that, but there's not professional sellers on there, so you don't necessarily get the guarantees that you would do buying C2C, if that makes sense. My advice, is to look on. It depends on what you sound to me like you're like a browser sometimes, aren't you?
A little browser.
Don't necessarily know what you want, but when it hits you, you're there, aren't you?
Purchase.
Okay. If you know exactly what you want, I would look at all the websites that you've got out there, do a bit of a comparison between the ones, and then look at the delivery terms and the seller's terms and that, and then make a choice. you know.
But then, so that's from a buyer's perspective. How
Yeah.
about from a seller's perspective? What marketplace is the best one to be on, and how do the other marketplaces compare to each other?
Right, so I'll turn what I've just said back the other way. If you're saying to the buyers, look at everywhere, if you're a seller and you're not everywhere, then you're going to miss that buyer.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I would say it is very category specific as well, you know. One of the good things that you do have with, let's say, eBay compared to some of the Chinese ones is that, you know, one of the biggest sellers on eBay is Best Buy in the US. Yeah. You've got Samsung on there. You've got some real big brands. So you, as a seller, I'm aligning my offering with those brands, and I'm using those big brands coverages in order to attract people to my listings as well. So you're actually tapping into that as well.
I think you just actually touched on something brilliant as well in that.
What?
Supply.
Something brilliant. I hope we recorded that, yeah? Yeah, we got that one, yeah.
So suppliers from the UK or people wishing to list their products from the UK can actually then go out and sell in other markets as well.
Yeah.
They can go sell in Europe, they can go sell in America, traditionally, which they wouldn't have access to. So how does that work from kind of a logistics perspective? When someone's looking at posting their product, how can they then, or what infrastructure do they need to put in place to actually get their products out to America?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, especially as shipping's constantly changing, especially with the US and China and everything at the moment as well.
100%. So if we take eBay has what is called the Global Shipping Program. Okay, so as a seller, I can list my items to 140 different countries. And if someone buys it, I then ship it to a global warehouse in Derby, in the UK, but there's similar ones around the world. And then overnight, that gets put on a pallet, and then the pallet goes to Argentina, and the pallet goes to Costa Rica or wherever it is, yeah? And that means as a seller, I can tap into those global markets. I don't necessarily need to have an agreement with DHL and negotiate all those 1s and 2s rates to go to those countries. I'm tapping into a really big rate that eBay's negotiated for those bulk shipments. So that's one good program. And I know other marketplaces have similar ones. You look at from that side. The other good thing is, from a buyer's perspective, you prepay all the duty and the tax. So it's a seamless transaction.
Has tariffs had any big impact on this?
Really, really good concentration. And you look at, yes. It's not the tariffs, it's the continuity or lack of at this moment in time. So if you look at some of the Chinese marketplaces, they've stopped advertising in the US.
Oh.
So you look at the App Store, there was a certain ones that were number one there. Yeah. They've just dropped off now, you know. So they're ploughing their effort into Europe. Now, the European Union is talking about tariffs from China as well, you know. So I think it's going to be, at least with the European Union, when they do, it takes a long time for them to do something. But when they do it, you know what you're doing, and then you just change around that. But you're right. At the moment, you know, you wake up every day and it's a different rule, really, in the US, isn't it? Yeah. Or it seems that way, doesn't it?
Exactly. And then with everything that's happening in the world right now, it's a little bit scary.
Well, it is, and yeah, it is. But I think you've got to, you haven't got to, again, as a entrepreneur, you've just got to continue on and deal with what's in your control.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't you?
I'm assuming the online platforms then are like amending prices and everything to fit the different, and it's hitting the buyer at the end of the day.
100%. And I think the good thing about marketplaces, they do a lot of that work with legislation and things like that. So we take US, one of the biggest changes was with the Wayfarer versus Dakota ruling with tax. I don't know if you remember that. Because it used to be there was no tax on e-commerce transactions in the US. Mm-hmm. Now there's over 450 different tax regimes. The marketplace takes care of all of that for you. So you don't have to keep changing the price. Now, if you had a Shopify website or your own website, you have to have other software that does that for you, because it is the responsibility of the seller or the marketplace to collect that tax, you know, from that side. Now, I think there's going to be a lot more changing on that, because At the moment, let's say in the US, there's a de minimis rule. I don't know if you would know that. So on quite a lot of stuff, if your order's under $800, then you don't pay tax or import duty. The buyer doesn't. Now, US merchants are saying that's not fair. I ship it within the US and I'm having to charge tax. But then, and that's one thing I think Trump will deal with. There's no doubt about that, because it's not an American first policy, is it?
Yeah, no.
So you got to keep your eyes on that, you know.
This sounds amazing. It's making me think, why are more businesses not all throwing their products onto the online marketplaces? But then it also makes me think, well, there's opportunity for saturation there.
Yeah.
And we talked earlier about, you know, the three areas: price, quality, the time. How do businesses compete when it does get to a point where, you know, because ultimately probably 80% of people do look at price, right? If there is a similar product, how do businesses compete?
So you've got to. It's quite an interesting. We did a bit of a test with one of our customers, one of our clients, and we increased the price of their products. And actually, this was the manufacturer selling direct. We increased that price, and he has resellers selling the same product that were typically 15% lower than them were. But because they appeared on the front page, they got most of the sales, and they were 15% more. And the reason they did that is because their content was better, their imagery was better. They were, you know, there was confidence because they were the manufacturer. I'm going to say there was that element as well. So I think it's not just about price. Price is important.
Yeah.
But your content and how you tap into that buyer is really, really important as well. And that's one thing that we work with a lot of resellers and brands. You know, for me, golden supplier would be someone that doesn't invest in their content, and they just give you a price and a description. You then have to put the hard work to build that content, but then you own that. You know, the challenge is where a manufacturer, let's take Apple, Samsung, for example. You know, when they release the new iPhone, they've got so much assets around that, you know, and they sell in so many different places. Yeah. And one thing they do, though, is for some reason they're able to command that price at the same, you know, which I sometimes find in Europe. Don't know how they do that, because there's laws around that, but they do it in a legitimate way from that side. So I think my advice would be, you need to try and own that product as much as possible. Yeah. One of the challenges you have, for example, with Amazon is that, you know, Amazon, you will sell on there. Amazon will see the sales coming through there, and then they'll try and source it themselves.
Yeah, I was just about to touch on that, actually. So how do small businesses actually deal with that?
It's all about your relationship. So you're not going to be able to own the relationship with every supplier, okay? But you've got to protect that, you know? And if Amazon goes to the supplier direct, what is the benefit for that supplier dealing direct with Amazon? Because it's a lot of hassle to deal with Amazon as a manufacturer direct. I think you know that from experience, don't you?
So we'll discuss about payment terms and all of that.
Yeah.
You mentioned cash flow as
Yeah.
well. But in terms of that whole process of a manufacturer dealing with Amazon direct and kind of cutting out the person that actually built up the brand, what can small businesses do to kind of protect themselves there?
Yeah, so it's about that relationship with the brand to start off with. So I think you've got two areas of products. Yeah. You either got a brand that you bring in and you own and you build that yourself. Okay, you own that, so you own the pricing, you own how that looks. But the difficult thing is you've got to build that. So it hasn't already got a customer base. You know, people buy for a couple of reasons. You know, one is because their friends and relatives are buying it and it's the thing to buy, but you've got to create that want, haven't you? The other way is to buy to resell branded stuff. Yeah. But then depending on your relationship with that supplier, you know, they could be selling cheaper to another reseller because the volume's there. Yeah. They're getting a better price. You know, it's about then how you protect that. Now in the US, we have what is called MAP pricing, where the manufacturer can say you mustn't sell that below that price. In the Great European Union, that's totally illegal. Yeah. And the fines are like, I think it's 10 times your worldwide turnover.
Wow.
If you're found to be colluding on that. I know.
That's insane.
I know.
So from a small business perspective, when they're choosing products that they want to be listing on, what kind of margins do they need to build in, and what should they be prepared to kind of give away to get on these platforms?
Yeah, so I think before you start listing, you do your research. Okay, so you know the products you're going to be able to source. And signing up, let's say eBay. eBay has a tool internally that it will give you how many's been sold of a certain item, the average price of that item, and if you sign up to eBay, they'll give you a store subscription as part of that, depending on the program you're on, then you'll get access to that tool. But if you don't, again, it's not rocket science. You just put in the front end, and then you come up what's on the front page, because that's what a buyer's going to do. If it's on the front page, that's where they're going to click, isn't it? So you need to be able to be sure that you can compete at that, because if you can't, why do it?
Exactly, but then this is where the kind of margins come into place, because so for example, eBay and Amazon will take their cut, and the eBay and Amazon fees can be quite high, and sometimes someone that's building up their own brand might only end up with sort of 5% profit at the end of it.
Yeah.
So how can they kind of justify that, and how can they make sure that it's actually worth their while putting themselves up on these platforms?
Yeah. So what I mentioned earlier, you also got to think about, you've got to sometimes take the fee as a marketing budget, okay? Yeah. And you've got to class it like that. So how much are you prepared to invest in those products to market that? Like whether you're putting an advert on Google AdWords or whether you're paying Facebook, for that advertising. So I put that as a kind of a separate thing. You need to understand what your business needs to operate on, and then what margin you want afterwards. You start by that and then build your price up. Yeah, that's how I would say. I would always say there is a minimum price that you will go down to as well. So whenever you're building your product data, put that minimum price in there. Don't go out at the minimum price. Find out what the marketplace price is. Go out at that, but you know that you can flex depending on that. You can also buy advertising on all the channels now.
I was going to ask on this because for me, I'm thinking, okay, a small business is coming online and you've got the larger brands that have got the funds to be able to pay for the advertising. What are the stats? How many people are just clicking onto those adverts? Because they sit on the top 10, I'm guessing, with product.
Yeah, and I'll be totally honest now, and this is going back to the days when I started, we didn't need to pay for advertising because there wasn't as many people doing it. 80% of everything listed on a marketplace is boosted using an advert of some sort.
80%.
Yeah, it's quite a high number now.
Wow.
Yeah, it depends on the category of stuff as well,
So really, you have to be factoring in advertisement spend as well.
You do. Now, they have different programs. eBay has costs per acquisition. So you can say, I'll pay an extra 2-3% on the sale. And they also have a cost per click model as well, depending on which one. Amazon has very, very different models. You can boost your store, you can boost different elements of that. But their model's also different, where you've got the buy box. So, you've got the yellow button, you press on that, and whoever is being advertised on there, that's the product you get, who supplies it.
Yeah.
The other thing you've got to bear in mind with Amazon, you're also betting against the house.
Well, yeah.
Aren't you?
Exactly, and that's a frustrating thing as being a small business owner. You've got to kind of compete with Amazon, which isn't always fair.
No. But you haven't got to ignore Amazon. And it's better to, if you're a brand or manufacturer, it's better to embrace it and work within their rules than ignore it.
Would you say it's kind of better the devil you know?
100%. 100%, yeah. Yeah, it is.
It's conflicting, isn't it? Because we talk about how we want to support small businesses, yet we are a nation that wants everything now, which is why you go to your likes of your Amazons. But actually, if you want to support your small businesses, you're probably better going over to a marketplace like Etsy, where I don't think they do the adverts and the things like that.
Well, they do, but Etsy's more crafty jewellery, that sort of, very good for that. So yeah, that is a good call out, and we haven't mentioned Etsy. They've really created a bit of a niche for themselves in that area. But you're right. I think this country is one of the most demanding countries from expectations than around. I've been quite fortunate to work around the world in this field, And then, I mentioned I live in Bulgaria, so I will wait 5 days for something because I've got no choice. Yeah. And my choice is limited. Yeah. So I actually get my parcels here. I fill my bag up when I get here, and then I get them delivered to my hotel, and then that's it. First thing I say when I check in, I say, "Have my parcels come?" Yeah. And then I take them all out of the boxes to get them into my Wizz Air little bag, to take them home from that side. But you're right. Here, same day at free delivery is the expectation. And marketplaces have driven that, haven't they? Amazon has driven that expectations. Amazon Prime. That's a great example. What would you if we take Amazon? What is Amazon? Is it a retailer? Is it a film studio? Is it
It's everything.
Yeah, they're an analytic company. That's what Jeff Bezos went out to do. Because they know more about you than you know yourself,
I know.
Have you got Alexas at home?
I haven't, purely because I know that they listen to the conversation and you never know what she could do one day.
We have one in every room, which is worrying, really, sometimes, But anyway, actually they have conversations with each other because you say Alexa, you don't know which one is good. And then you worry, and then you get confused, and then you say Siri, and then Alexa says, "I think you made a mistake there." On that side, but they know exactly, what you're watching on Amazon Prime, so they know what sort of things you're into. So when
it's got to a point where we all know now that adverts pop up on the conversations we're having, but it's got to a point now where I'm not having conversations, I'm thinking things, and adverts are popping up, and that is what scares the life out of me.
It does, yeah.
But then this is where the whole ethics of it all comes into play. Like, we've given quite a lot of power to these marketplaces and tech companies like Facebook, for example. They know everything that you're doing, right?
I tell you what, when I worked at Sainsbury's, one of the first things that I implemented was the reward cards, like Nectar cards, as it moved into. Trying to convince the board that they were giving 1 pence per pound away. They would say, "Oh, we're giving money away." I tell you what, it was golden because I could log into the back end. I knew exactly what you bought. I knew when someone was pregnant before the partner knew because the buying patterns changed.
The clear blue pregnancy test.
And absolutely. They started buying things they don't know what to put in their basket. And then we would just mail shop them a £20 voucher for baby shop.
Wow.
And then, a baby costs on average 20, 30K, doesn't it? So we want that business.
Yeah.
And that's what Amazon's doing, They know exactly where you're going, what you're buying, what's recommended, It is.
It's actually insane.
But we love it because we love convenience, don't we?
Yeah, it just makes me sad because I think it's making me think: does the small business owner have a chance here, long term?
I think one thing you don't get with the big organisation is that passion. We started out with that. You got to feel passion for what you do, yeah. I think you've got a real big push on this, haven't you? People, AI. Where's the people behind it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think right now we're moving too much into technology, whereas what we really need to do is take a step back. And what we're trying to do at Streamline is take a step back and actually think, what's more important is the conversations and relationships that we're actually having. And that's what the whole platform's designed to do.
Yes.
Is actually enhance those personal connections whilst creating a safe atmosphere for it. But I think that's where the major players are kind of missing because it's just about convenience. It's just about the numbers.
And I think I would love to phone somebody and not go through a IVR and get finger strained by keep pressing a button going round and round and round. I'd love someone just to answer the phone and speak to me.
But now it's even worse. You call up one of these call centres and it's an AI agent.
Yeah.
And then they don't understand what you're saying and you're getting frustrated and you're almost like, just hang up the phone.
Yeah, I know. They don't understand what you're saying, And then, you go around in circles. And then you press the one button and they just give you a recorded message and they cut the phone off after 10 minutes.
Yeah,
You go, no! But we want convenience, don't we? I think it's a balance. It is a balance, isn't it?
I think we will have to find a balance one day. I think it will come to a point where everybody will be sick of what we've created ourselves. It's our own doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whether we can draw that back and, like Fires says, is have that balance between AI and people. I think that's what we need as a society and a community. Whether we can do that ourselves, who knows?
But I always remember, you know, my when I was growing up, my dad said to me, "Oh, it wasn't like it was when I was a young lad."
Yeah.
Yes, and I said, "Dad, I'll never say that when I'm old.
I'm saying
just
that.
like him now.
I'm
I
saying
know.
that,
I know.
yeah.
Let's go back. Yeah. You know, one thing one that's really interesting, and I said I've been really fortunate to travel around the world. I live in Bulgaria, which is kind of a little bit 10 years behind the UK in certain things, but we're all on the same path. You know, and the same with e-commerce as well. We're all on the same path, but different places, different categories, different locations are at different places in that journey. But we're all going to the same direction. And I think we can learn from that as well, you know. But going back to what your question was, it is hard for SMEs. It is hard for startups. Whether that should put you off, no. If you feel passionate about what you got, you offer something that's quite unique.
Niching down is probably
100%.
key right now.
Yeah, I would give it. But you've got to make sure your cash flows locked down. That's one bit of advice I would say.
There's a podcast coming up on that. So
we'll is it catch up? You're giving out cash.
Something like that.
Yeah, I was going to say.
But so that's kind of where we're at right now, and the status of the current market. Where do you think we're going in the next sort of 10 years with marketplaces and online commerce? Do you think it's just going to grow exponentially? Everything kind of has a ceiling. So where do you think we're kind of going to get to?
Yeah, so you'll see certain things come back around. Okay, so we talked about Love Island. Yeah, you know, eBay tried to get away from secondhand stuff. Yeah, tried hard to get away from that. Now they're embracing it back because we're now in an environment that sustainability is really important to us. Yeah. So that's what works. So we're embracing that. So there's going to be some element of that. But then also it's about change. And one good thing about marketplaces, they are ahead of the curve. So we talked about Amazon same day. eBay's just launched eBay Live. So at Comic-Con a few weeks ago, they had a big booth there where they were doing online auctions and physical auctions all into one. So more like a social media type thing. We're bringing Pokemon cards and things like that.
Yeah, there's another platform called Whatnot.
Absolutely. So it's tapping into the customer base that it's already got and also offering them something different. And they're evolving in that way as well. So I think, you know, one good thing about marketplaces for SMEs is that they are ahead of the curve, whether it's eBay, Amazon or the others. And you are actually tapping into that technology where you don't have to invest in it yourself, if that makes sense. But it will continue to change. You know, there's people's wants and needs, legislation and compliance. That is one of the biggest areas. You know, it's good for a business like me because change, we have to adapt, which means then I'm working with people to educate and help them on that journey. But it comes thick and fast, you know. One of the biggest things that are coming through is called the product passport. I don't know if you've seen. So the EU wants to remove barcodes and put QR codes so you can scan that and it will give you a full journey of that product from where the factory it was made to what exactly is in it. And that means it's then dynamically updated as well because it's not a physical thing.
That's good because I think a lot of people, especially with these Chinese marketplaces, are very conscious about welfare.
Yes. And then we'll start building in, you know, like when you go into, you know, foods and restaurants, you've got 5 stars. I've never seen a place that hasn't got 5 stars. I don't know, not well to go into one. I was going to say Luton. Maybe I don't know. There's a takeaway there. I saw 2 stars. I'm not sure. I don't know Luton or Bedford. It's great there. I just want to point that out. Yeah, it's great. But yeah, it's bringing all that sort of thing. So you kind of have a rating on both the seller and the product. Yeah, so we're more informed. We as consumers have so much information at our fingertips. I think sometimes too much information.
A bit too much.
Yeah.
This QR code, this passport is a little bit scary, especially as a small business owner, because say, for example, if I'm creating a brand and someone can then go purchase my product, scan the passport, and then see exactly who my manufacturer is,
Yeah.
what's stopping them from replicating my brand, apart from the intellectual property that I own?
100% agree. And I think it's a balance of visibility to the consumer and privacy as well. I think that is a good thing. But that's where, you know, that's where you've got to ask those right questions as a buyer, a business going to a manufacturer is, you know, what's the price? What's your quality? What's your sustainability policy? What's your loyalty to me as a business? You know, it's those sort of questions you've got to ask as well, you know, from that side.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
I don't have anything else to cover. I think we've lifted the
covered
lid on
a
a
hell of a
lot.
Really? Okay.
Oh,
You were
where
very
else can we
kind
take
on
it?
me, yeah? Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming in, Andrew. Really appreciate it. And if the guys want to get in touch with Emotive Online, they can do so via the Streamline website. We're always willing to put you in contact with great people like this. And this is what our podcast is all about, having these sorts of relationships where you guys can pick up the phone and have conversations directly with Andrew.
Thank you, and thanks for inviting me. It's been awesome, and it's great to talk to you guys.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.